Well, last but not least, we're going to be making an apple pie that doesn't have any free sugars added. And when I think about comfort foods, I think about there's hardly anything better than a wonderful piece of apple pie. And I'm actually going to be showing you today how to make it with a whole grain crust. Now this here is freshly ground whole wheat pastry flour. And if you don't have that, that's okay. Just go ahead and use maybe half whole wheat flour and half unbleached. And so we've got 3 cups for a double crust, which is what you need for the apple pie. You need a crust for the bottom and then a crust for the top. And then when you're making a pie, a good formula is 1 part flour and half that amount of liquid. And then that liquid you can use however much oil you want to use. You would maybe use 6 tablespoons of oil to enough water to make 1.5 cups, or you can even use half and half. You can use 3/4 of a cup of oil with 3/4 of a cup of water, and that's going to give you a richer crust. So then again, it depends on who you're cooking for. When it's just for myself, I want to go lower on the oil. I'm also going to add a little bit of salt to that flour, and we'll stir that in before we add our liquid. So again, it's 3 cups of flour, 1.5 cups of liquid. So you want to use no more than half of that oil and half water, or you can cut down on the oil even less, just depending on your preference. So you want to mix this together, and I want you to see how amazing a whole grain crust can be. It's not going to be tender and it's not going to be heavy. And our dough is actually soft. It's going to be soft. After I mix it up, I take a look at it. And if it looks like it's not going to be able to roll out very easily, I might add just a little more flour. You can also use part oat flour, which I really love. Sometimes I'll grind up my oats in the blender and just use maybe up to 1/4 of the flour and use it with oats. So we're just going to firm this up just a little bit with a touch more flour, and you can see it's very soft. Okay? You want it firm enough to roll out, but you don't want a stiff dough. And it has a wonderful mild flavor, the pastry wheat. Okay, so this is a good amount of dough, and we're going to divide this in 2. I usually do 1/2 just a little bigger than the top, because it usually takes a little more dough to cover the bottom of the pan than it does the top of the apples. All right, so how are we going to turn this soft dough into a pie? It's really easy. We're going to moisten the countertop with just a little bit of water. And then we're going to take a piece of plastic wrap. This is your friend. You know, when I was little, my mom used to use pastry cloth and flour, and it just seemed so complicated that I really never made many pies. And then a young guy that we knew, he was in his early 20s, he showed us how to make pie like this. And from then on, I never went back to doing it the other way. So now we're going to take half the dough. We're going to put it on the plastic wrap, and I usually just kind of flatten it a little. And then we're going to top the whole thing with another piece of plastic wrap. Okay, here we go. Now you can roll out your crust without any mess. And how big do you want to go? Well, you want to go a little bit bigger, maybe 1 inch bigger around than whatever size pan you're using. Maybe you have an 8-inch pie pan, maybe you have a 9-inch pie pan. This particular pan is 9-inch. So when I think I have it about right, and by the way, if it's not a perfect circle, you can use your hands to kind of press it and get a more perfect shape. Then I take my pie pan and kind of invert it. Well, it looks like it's about right. It's almost an inch all the way around, extending past the size of my pan. I want to make it a little more perfect. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to get this into here. Are you ready? We'll peel off the top layer. You won't need this again. And we're going to lift and tip it away from you like this. And you just lift up and lay it in the crust. And you can, at this point, mold it a little bit. You can lift it and kind of drop it down into the pan. Press out any air bubbles. Now lift this off. Now we'll fill it with apples, which I've got here. These are pre-cooked. And these are Johnacles that I cooked just with apple juice concentrate. So it was 6 to 8 whole apples chopped. And then I used 1 cup of apple juice concentrate, and I thickened it with a tablespoon and a half of cornstarch. The filling for this apple pie was made from 8 apples and 1 cup of apple juice concentrate with 2.5 tablespoons of cornstarch and a teaspoon of cinnamon. You could also use coriander and cardamom if you prefer. So you just want to cook that filling until the apples are barely tender. You don't want to overcook that. But the reason why this pie is so delicious is because it's made with the apple juice concentrate, and it's actually sweeter and more flavorful and more tender than a regular apple pie that's made with sugar. We've compared them side by side, and hands down, people prefer this pie over regular apple pie. So I hope you'll try it. Now, I need to show you how to get the top crust on, and again, we're going to take that dough and we're going to roll it out the same as we did before. Lay your plastic wrap down. Turn out your dough. And again, I usually press it. Make like a little circle there. We're going to cover it again with plastic wrap. And roll it out to cover the top of the pie. And this pie really is easy to make. Okay, we're almost there. Usually the top crust I roll out a little bit smaller than the top one. I mean the bottom one, I'm sorry. All right, I'm gonna peel that top off. Again, you can press it to make it a little more perfect. If you didn't get it exactly right, we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're going to lift this and let it drop away from you, just like this, okay? You bring it over, lay it over the top of the pie. There you go, and that's what it will look like. Now, how do we get it ready to bake? Just take a bread knife and you can trim off the edge. Some people like to tuck it, okay? If you like a thick crust, you want to just tuck it around the edge. But another way is just to trim it off. And I tend to do this most of the time. And just let it drop down. And just like that. And I know after this you're going to want to make an apple pie. I hope you think, wow, that looked so easy. I just have to try it. And then you do the traditional flute. And just go all the way around. And because this already has a baked filling in there, it's already cooked, You don't have to have it in the oven for as long as a traditional pie. You're going to bake this at a higher temperature, maybe 375, 400, for about 35 to 45 minutes until the crust looks crispy and just beginning to brown. Because like I said, the filling's already cooked. So then you can do something pretty. You can use cookie cutters on top, or you can do the standard apple pie flute. And there you go. I hope you saw how easy it is to make a sugarless apple pie.